Hello, so this is just a recap on exactly how you make a seamless pattern. If you find yourself continuously struggling on this part, hopefully this will be helpful. So I'm going to go over how to do just simple shapes, and I'm going to also show how to do the type. Alright, so first off, make sure you have downloaded the provided file. It's under Files, Illustrator Exercise Pattern, and then your name. And I'm going to isolate myself just to playfulness. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the rectangle tool. So I'm going to make this 5 by 5. So this is what it should look like at the end. My sample, and then how they seam together into 4 squares. If you're struggling, start off with very simple shapes. Don't do outline, only do fill. And this is good for the start. Once you get it and understand what was going on, then you can move into more complicated shapes. But if you are struggling, stay with the simpler ones. Practice your ways of like rotating and shifting the images. Only focus on the top portion of your outline square and the portion on the left. This is where the seamless happens and is the most complicated aspect of this project. Next, we want to open up our layer panel. I have all my pattern elements on the same layer, and I'm on start here. So that's really important that they're all on the same layer. The next thing that's important is to make sure that this is not filled. So when I move this forward, because the square that is going to be how I crop the images needs to be in front of my shapes. So I want to go up to Objects, Range, Forward. And now I know that I actually still have it filled in. I want to make sure it is not filled in. Also make sure that all of your shapes at this time when it's difficult does not have outline. So I'm just going to go around to all my shapes and make sure that there's that dash mark through it, which means it doesn't have a stroke. So no strokes. And you can do that here, or remember you can do that up here. All right, so let's duplicate these shapes so that we can move them to the opposite side of our square that allow us to have that perfect seamless look. So the first thing I'm going to do is select all of my shapes. They're aligned to the top and left. I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to use Copy, Command C. And then I'm going to go back to Edit because I'm going to paste it, but I'm going to paste it in front. So make sure you're pasting in front. You want to make sure that it is perfectly and exactly in the same spot as your original. All right, now that everything is pasted correctly on top, I don't have to worry about any misplacement. So the next thing is to move these shapes across. So I'm going to go downwards using my transform. If you do not see this information here, please make sure you're using the control. This control bar allows you to have quick access to make edits and changes to the content. See, if it's missing, you're missing out on the opportunity to follow along. So make sure that it is on control. We're going to go to transform. We're going to actually go to the Y value. And we're going to give it a plus value. We want it to go plus 5. It is 5 inches tall. I want it to move 5 inches, additional 5 inches along the Y value. And there it goes, and it lined up perfectly. So again, for this one, I'm going to go to our transform. Again, to the Y value plus 5. Hit return, and it moves exactly where it needs to go. For this one, I'm going to go a little faster, and I'm going to select them all, going across the X value. I'm going to go to the transform to the X. I'm going to add plus again and 5 because that is the width of the box. And I'm going to hit return. And now we have our perfect seamless framed around the box. Things we need to check over. 1, is this box just an outline? Check. You can see that it's just an outline with a stroke on it. All right, next, are all the objects under one layer? We're going to select it and make sure they're all in red, which is the icon red. Next, we want to make sure that this line is definitely ranged bring front. We want it on top of everything else. All right, there should be no reason, cross our fingers, that this won't work now. So now the last thing that you need to do is to go to Pathfinder. If it's not here, remember Windows holds all of these panels, and you can go right to Pathfinder and open it up. Once we click on Pathfinder, you want to go to the lower part of Pathfinders, and we want to look for the right one. If you hover over it a little bit, you will find that it comes up. We're looking for the crop one. And voila, it cropped perfectly. Now you can enjoy filling in the inside of this pattern to make new shapes. It doesn't matter if it's just outlined. It doesn't matter if it's a squiggly drawn shape. Remember, don't come over the edge. You can come really close, but don't go over the edge. You spent so much time making sure that that works. Finally, I select the whole thing. I go to Object, Group, which is also Command G. All right, after you do that, it's the fun drop and drag into swatches. Again, if you don't see swatches here, it's in Windows. And I drop and drag in here. All right, and I have my new pattern. Now, I can see what my new pattern will look in a full sheet. Grab a rectangle, and then I add my pattern. And that's what my pattern starts to look like. All right, let's talk type. So I set it up a little bit, make sure that, again, you have an outlined box, that it's exactly 5 by 5 in dimension, and then make sure you're only putting your letters on the top and the left side. So talking about type a little bit, I'm going to get into the fact that this is a font. A font is a software. It allows me to be able to change and manipulate this font. Like I can make it lowercase. I can use different glyphs. When I mean glyphs is all these letter forms are designed as a glyph. There's one point where I can change the look of one. Depending on my whimsy, I might want to actually change the actual typeface to a different look or feel, which is fantastic about the ability to change immediately with my type. But once you want to manipulate the type, once you want to change the type, cut it apart, break it, you must make sure it is now a shape. Because remember the problem before? I said, let's start with simple shapes. Use simple shapes to make this thing work, and then you can play with how to make the other shapes work. So this needs to be a shape or it will not crop it because it's software, not a shape. See how there's a line there? We want to make sure that that line doesn't exist anymore and that the line is now different, more like what you would see in a shape. So this square has points, and the points I can change and adjust once I select one. Here, there are no points. There's no way to change and adjust it unless I'm using the characters. Settings, well, the way to make it into a shape is going under type. I make sure I'm always on the selection tool, which is the black arrow. I go to type and I go to create outline. That is the most important thing you need to do. I click on it and now it's outlined. Now, if I went to my direct selection tool, I would actually be able to see these little points now and adjust those points. So here, I'm going to change all of these into outline. Again, I want to be on the selection tool, and I'm going to go and make sure that it says create outline. Now everything is now created as an outline. All right, the next step is really exactly the same as using any simple shape. I select all the objects. I go to edit. I go to copy, Command C. And then I go to paste in front. Again, we're making sure that mathematically everything is perfectly in the same place. Once I've done that, I want to start moving. And again, you want to make sure this panel is available. And I go to transform. I know that this is Y, going downwards is Y. So I'm going to add my plus. I'm giving it directions of add more, which will mean move it the 5 inches to the other side. All right, perfect. It did it. It is now mirroring the top one. Right now I select both of these. If something goes wonky, just do each one by itself. But I'm going to try to grab them both to make this a little faster. I'm doing X. Now I'm going across. I'm adding that plus. I'm adding the 5, which is the length of whatever size square you have. And then I hit return. And there's my mirrored image. And the other things that we need to make sure that we have is what? We have to select it all. We want to make sure that they're all on the same layer. So they all should have the same color line around it. It should be red. So that's good. We have that done. We want to make sure that this square is above everything. So let's make sure that we are going to Object, Range, Front. Now that should be everything that we do to make sure that this is successful, that we've already outlined our type and it's all ready to go. So I'll select everything. I will go to Pathfinder. I'll make sure I'm going to the right one because that will change what happens. I want to make sure I go to crop and voila, it's done. So these will line up seamlessly. Now I can add in whatever I want into the center. Object group, because remember we got to group it all together at the final. And then when I go into my swatches, make sure swatches are available. If they're not, go to Windows. I'm going to drag and pull it into my swatches. So I now should have a new pattern. And then I want evidence of how this becomes seamless, because right now I can't tell what's going on, right? And I'm just going to add in the fill, which is our pattern. And voila, there we go. I have my pattern. So the only difference is that you must outline your type. And the only other thing is make sure you save this correctly. So go to File, Save As, Illustrator, PDF. You want to make sure that you can see use all artboards because you are using all your artboards. There's 6 of them, so we want to make sure that we see all 6 of your images. We hit save. Make sure you change your name and then hit save. You don't want to preserve. You don't want to embed. All you want to do, I like, is to see it after it's saved. You always want to look at the PDF and just make sure it's correct. So I might go back and take out this black line and just make sure that my type is there. And voila, done.